We're live. Hello, everybody. It is Thursday. It is, what's today's date? Today is October 15th. It's estimated tax day.
Yeah.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. If you're joining us live or if you're joining us later, let us know where you're watching from, and and also let us know how you take your coffee, because we are going to be talking about coffee today. Not just coffee, but that's one of the things that we talk about here. This is Coffee with Entrepreneurs Live. Susim Kumar Acharya, I hope I'm saying that right, is saying, hey, hi, nice to see you. Let us know where you're watching from. Today we are talking with Lori Darley. Lori, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Marie.
I'm so excited to be here with you.
Me too.
It's been an adventure to get on here. So we've had quite the morning already. Remind me, where are you calling in from?
Me? I live in Dallas, Texas.
Awesome. How is everything out there?
Well, so far so good. It's kind of a cloudy day, and we've been having beautiful weather, so no complaints.
Awesome. That's awesome. So right now we have Susim is in India. Agatha is here watching from Montreal, and she's drinking a green tea. So
yes.
I'm very excited. Yolanda is here, and she's in Florida, dunking coffee with cream. I have my old standby, my lavender oat milk latte that I get most mornings. There's this really great small coffee shop that really needs the business right now. So it's what I tell myself every morning, and that I'm doing a good thing by not making my coffee at home.
That's great.
So that's what I'm drinking right now. Lori, how do you take your coffee?
I take my coffee black, and I will share with you just a bit of an adventure. I had literally camping out in my home because we're in the middle of a remodel, and our disposal exploded last night in operation. So the kitchen sink is down. So making my black coffee was an adventure. I had to take the old coffee outside to the patio, wash it down with a hose. So you get the picture.
Oh my
gosh.
I
had to have my coffee.
Sounds like it. And on top of that all, Mercury's in retrograde. We had some issues with the Restream link this morning, and so I'm certainly glad I have mine right here. Hello to Joel in Minneapolis. Hello to Kelsey. Wow, we got lots of folks watching, and we have kind of an international audience, which is great.
Wonderful.
I always love it when that happens. So we're gonna be talking about you, who you are, what you do, and your book. And so I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for Lori during the call, I have the chat up here, and we will be able to answer your questions live. So Lori, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? That's a loaded question. Let's see, I'm a white female living in Dallas, Texas. I'm from originally the upstate New York region, grew up in Schenectady and Long Island, as I often say. And I've been living in Texas for most of my adult life, which I will confess is much longer than the previous portion of my life. And I have been privileged, very privileged in this lifetime to be able to have many opportunities, many of which that one was for the first half of my life to explore a career in the dance. And I was an artistic director and choreographer for a professional contemporary dance company here in Dallas. We were kind of artistic pioneers, one of the first modern dance companies here in Dallas, co-founded back in the day in 1979-80. So you guys can do the math more quickly in your heads than I usually do. And I ran that company for 20 years. And during that time, I became very interested in how the mind works and how the mind impacts performance. And so when I danced professionally and was artistic director till I was 43, and I made a transition into coaching because I realized that I had been a performance coach my entire artistic career. And so I hung up my shingle, got my training, and became originally a transitions coach. And it was in 2015 that I rebranded to Conscious Leaders, because for the past 25 years or so, I've been very active in the social, I'll say social entrepreneurship movement through Social Venture Network, now Social Venture Circle. I'm also somewhat involved with the conscious capitalism movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, what I love to do and how I love to work with people is to support them in thinking about the way that they think, so that they can begin to release the claws of our conditioning in such a way that we can have a life that we love and a business that is really working and humming.
That's fantastic. So you're speaking to a fellow artist turned entrepreneur. You know, I in my former life was a working jazz musician and transitioned into entrepreneurship, and now I do both. You know, but it's on my terms, right? You know,
Yes.
so I love talking to fellow artists slash entrepreneurs, and you know,
Oh.
I find that the transition between something creative and something like coaching or consulting can be very, very natural in these very unexpected ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what I find is that a lot of people say to me, what do you mean you went from music to business?
Yes.
How does that work? But actually, you know, what I do is very, and what you do is still very, very creative. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Wow, that is a deep topic. And I go deep fast, so I warn you. But before I go there, I want to share with you a phrase that I often use when in the coaching arena. We often highlight distinctions that are in play that people are not necessarily aware of until they become distinguished for them. And they'll often share with me what they heard me say. And I often use the term close enough for jazz. Because jazz is so improvisational, right? And it's like allowing the music to flow through you. Dance has always been, for me, it's almost like my secret power. And some people call it Shakti energy. And that informs me on so many different levels when I'm working with my clients. I listen at a very, very deep level and very heart-centered, but also it gives me clues when I'm tapping into someone's the things that are not said, like their, you know, their micro messages or just body language, you know, that kind of thing. And I also have just, you know, much like many people in the United States and around the world, I have a personality type, a preference for making connections. And those connections are often outside the box. And so that can be very, very useful when a lot of people will come to me to solve a problem. And as a coach, that's not my job. My job is to really support them in finding and accessing their own wisdom so that they can solve their own problems and take full ownership. Because I don't know about you, when anybody ever tells me to do something, it might be great advice, but it came from over there.
Yeah.
It's something I sourced myself.
Right.
So that's I would say that the embodied intelligence is very much a part of my coaching approach, and it's very much connected. It took me a while to figure that out because when I started coaching early on in my career over 20 years ago, that it was very you know, didactic, not didactic, but just dualistic. You know, we were in a dyad, right? And it was a lot of talking. And so tuning into that inner voice and that felt sense can be extraordinarily powerful. And so that was part of my background is and certification is I'm a certified somatic coach, which means I use the body's wisdom in a very particular way to support people in expanding the scope of what they're willing to take into account beyond their own conditioning, what they were, you know, patterned, or, the early patterning of their life. So,
Sure.
yeah, hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It sounds like, the work that you do is really, really sort of, the way you describe it, it's very deep work, right? It involves very deep listening. It involves, really paying attention, especially these days, paying attention to nonverbal cues, like on Zoom,
Oh,
is something there's something to be said for that. So, it's a way to foster connection. So I love that.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that a lot. And yes, that's I've done actual some trainings on remote feedback and how do we deliver it and the things to really look out for and watch out for. And when we're building innovative cultures, without that energy, without that physicality, that connection, we feel very isolated and siloed in terms of our own ability to make those connections. So yes, appreciate what you said.
Yeah, and these days, right, more people than ever are going through
More
transitions,
than ever.
right? In light of the pandemic, and lots of people are out of work or looking for new work or transitioning to work from home, or what have you. There's sort of countless different situations out there. Do you find that that your work's been affected by that?
Well, thankfully, prior to COVID and all of the challenges and opportunities that it has presented to us, um, I had already been working remotely quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Been working and doing group coaching. I'll have a screen full of faces, and with a very often with intact teams or cross-functional teams.
Yeah.
And it's so revealing, right? But you cannot make any assumptions about what you're picking up on, right? You really
Right.
need to check in. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So you have a book called Dancing Naked.
I
Uh,
do.
Tell us a little bit about that, and what inspired you to write the book. What was the journey like?
Hmm. Great question. Thank you. So it was published in 2016, but it was probably a 10 or 15-year journey. Um, I've always journaled
Mm-hmm.
and did some creative writing, and love to write. And went through a couple of iterations, one on my own. I worked with an editor who also was the co-writer with Lynn Twist on The Soul of Money.
Mm-hmm.
And we went a couple of different directions. And, I'm a coach, I'm a sole proprietor, and it was very personal. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, well, nobody really is that interested in my personal life or anything like that. And so, actually, what helped me get it over the fence was having dinner with Mr. Corey Blake, who's the CEO of Roundtable Companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared with him that I'd been working on this manuscript for a very long time. And and I had not actually put the name Dancing Naked on it yet, but I shared with him the title. And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my, we got to talk. And so it was an over a year journey, and co-authored by
Mm-hmm.
Agnata, who's on the call, as well as with Alexander Corwin. And it was an extraordinary journey. The first half of the book is uh, a lot of my original manuscript, but it's focused in two parts. The first half of the book is the subtitle of the book is Finding Your Power as a Conscious Leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first half is Claiming Your Power as a Conscious Leader, how I claimed my own power. And then
Mm-hmm.
the second half is how I use the clearing process to support others in claiming their power as a conscious leader.
Right.
So,
So, of course, hearing that title, right, and then the subtitle is really kind of an unexpected thing, right? Because
yeah.
you start with Dancing Naked. All right, well, is that a memoir? Is it, is it a fiction? What is it? And then it's about leadership, and it's about conscious leadership. And so, to me, I was super interested in it because I was like, this is really unexpected, right?
Thank you.
What what do you get that reaction a lot from a lot of people?
Yeah, it's funny. My husband is a great namer, and he actually came up with a title.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and we have a great collaborative relationship. And he also created a game called Bad Actors, and I helped him name that. So we kind of did the swap-a-rooney thing. And sorry, I couldn't help but give him a plug.
All good.
And and so yeah, so the name is intended to be. I've always considered myself to be a bit of the court jester, the fool. The only one in the court that gets to tell the king the truth without getting her head lopped off. And so Dancing Naked, often people say, well, is this about you dancing naked? Or people make other kind of, their minds can't help but say the most inappropriate thing. And that's okay, because I know where they're coming from. And that's part of the deal. It's partly to drive curiosity. But Dancing Naked is much like what Brene Brown does. And Corey Blake, in terms of his book of his question cards, Vulnerability is Sexy, which I understand is part of the program. Dancing Naked is, there's a wonderful quote, dance like no one is watching, right? How do we find our most authentic selves and live out loud in the world? Right. And so that's really what Dancing Naked is. How do we express our power as conscious leaders from our most authentic and vulnerable place?
Wonderful. So what advice do you have to leaders who maybe are uncomfortable being vulnerable with their people or even with themselves?
Well, the advice that I would give is practice getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right? Most leaders, the reason why we're vulnerable is because our nature is to protect ourselves. Our brains are organs of survival.
Right.
And so our brains are going to do everything that we can to not be vulnerable. So a lot has been written, obviously, about this, but it's a practice of leaning in. And start small. Start with maybe some of the relationships with people that you trust most, and then start to widen the practice with people that I work with leaders all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm working with a gentleman right now, and I've just coached him to say and share something about himself when he's attempting to give tough feedback to someone, so that people do not feel isolated and separated, but that we're all in this together, really. We all have our own idiosyncrasies and our own triggers. But when you do that, when you do reveal aspects of it's not about vomiting out your deepest, darkest secret either. There are lots of small little ways that you can say, you know what, I'm just feeling a little jittery right now. Maybe it's one too many cups of the black coffee, but just that helps the other person's nervous system relax. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not alone here, because oftentimes we're experiencing the same or a similar energetic experience. Yeah.
And it sounds like that's something that you can do. That's a one-to-one, it's a very human thing, right? And if you start there, the next step is to do it in front of the room, right? The next step is to do it in front of your whole organization. So that's wonderful advice. And it sounds like something that all of us could remember to do, you know?
Yeah. I think it's probably why self-deprecating humor is just so disarming for
Yeah.
people. It's important that you don't overuse it though,
Right.
because it can start to look like a technique. Yeah.
um, awesome. And it looks like Kelly's just joined us. Thanks for jumping on here. So if you have any questions for Lori, either about her book or her practice, do write them in the chat. What I'm interested in is what are you doing with your days now? Now that we're sort of, the world's changed. How does a day in your life look?
Well, every morning I wake up and I journal and I
Mm-hmm.
meditate and have my coffee. And every day for me is very different. Some days the coaching is packed in. Other days I find that I have more spaciousness. And I will tell you that that spaciousness makes me feel a little nervous. It's like, okay, what's in my pipeline? Blah, 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 right? But what I've found is that the more I try to push and make things happen, oftentimes it doesn't work very well. What I need to do is what I do already, which is to listen deeply for what is wanted and needed and find ways to contribute. And what I found is that when I relax into that space, things start to just, to me, it's a practice of cultivation. And so cultivating relationships, cultivating friendships, cultivating business, conversations, and just supporting people in that way has been probably where a lot of my time has been going now. That and engaging in a total remodel of our home, which is, they say a lot of marriages break up. We're doing okay, but it has tested us to our very cores, and I'm not exaggerating. So I've been managing the whole project, and I've never done anything like that. So
That's fantastic.
Honestly, it's taken a lot of time.
Well, I have to say the room behind you looks really great. It looks like you kind of just moved in, so it looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, they say that either moving or remodeling is the two most stressful times for a couple. So congratulations for getting through it.
Thank you. We're not there yet, as as the story with the disposal.
Yeah.
Was demonstrated so beautifully.
And who's your ideal client to work with? Who do you love to work with?
Well, I think probably first and foremost, someone who's really a request for coaching and is open to coaching and to trying on new practices. Of course, I like to influence those who influence others, because we're in a world right now where we need to expand the scope of that influence. And conscious leadership is something that it's not something that you can turn on and off, but it is something that I really do believe that business leaders have an extraordinary opportunity to create cultures that are aware of how the human mind works, and that we can be responsible for how we respond to outside circumstances, to people who we have challenges with. So business leaders, preferably, I love to start with the C-suite, obviously, because without that engagement, there's not much opportunity that to spread and to inculcate the culture with the practices that will produce results. That being said, I'm also working with individuals who are wanting to do some deeper work as it relates to living a legacy of their life in the present moment. So as a transitions coach, I used to say I support people in living committed, fully chosen, and creative futures. And so that pretty much applies now. Although legacy can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And usually it's somewhere out there, and it has to do with money transferring hands. It's more like You know, there's a song that the world is forever singing, if only you had the ears to hear it. That's a Shakespearean quote. And I
Yeah.
support people in helping to thin the clouds so
Mhm.
that they can better hear the song that is singing through them and how to live that fully in the world.
I love that. Legacy. So many people think of legacy, like you said, it's about when you die, right?
Yeah.
Who gets what, what are you leaving your kids? What are you leaving this person,
Yeah.
that person, the other person? But how can we live our legacy now? Like,
Yeah. Are you asking me?
yeah.
Oh.
And also I'm asking, like as a meta question, right?
Yeah.
Like, you and also the wider world.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that probably the most foundational step is to understand how you have been imprinted upon from the moment you came out the chute, right? Your culture, your gender, how the world is needing for you to behave, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our choices growing up have been an expression of our natural self-expression and authenticity, and other choices that we have made have been I call compensatory. They've been things that we've done that we thought that we had to do in order to survive and be successful. And that may not always, and those behaviors may no longer be consistent with who you want to be in the world and how you want to show up. So we take a good hard look at what are those complex set of internal conversations that you may not actually have. They may have you rather than you having them. They're always
Mm.
going to be there, but I work on shifting the relationship to some of that unconscious patterning.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. So we do have the RTC folks here.
I know.
Shout out to
Hey
everybody.
guys, I can't see you, but I sense you.
Yeah, they're commenting away. Kelsey points out that house projects are exciting but stressful, especially in Mercury retrograde. And for those of you,
Not to mention whatever is happening with Mars right now, but
right.
I'm not an expert. I just my ears perk up when I like to point at reasons. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. For those of you just joining us, it's funny. We had some issues with the text, so we are on Zoom right now. So I have Restream open kind of at the bottom, so I'm watching the chat scroll. And you'll be able to jump in later and have a conversation with these lovely folks. So for those of you who are watching, if it's your first time tuning in, we have the Roundtable Company's Vulnerability is Sexy game. And it's a card game where you get to ask questions and you can play it. I have fun asking these questions at home, right? Or it's something you can ask your team, and they're really easy questions to kind of get, they're sort of easier questions and more involved questions to get to know somebody, right? And, I'm using these in the Slack channel for my team, right? So,
Fantastic.
asking questions like, when's the last time you considered yourself a daredevil, or describe the best day you've ever had at work? It's a nice conversation starter. So I'm going to ask you level
Ruh-roh.
2.
I feel nervous all of a sudden.
And so this is a good one, and I promise you I'm not going to put you too much on the spot. I'll put you a little bit on the spot. Actually, before we get there, Kelsey asks, what's your favorite style of dance?
Oh, that's hard. Style of dance. Well, I'm not a ballroom dancer, so I wouldn't be able to point to that. But if I were to be a ballroom dancer, I would love to tango.
Nice.
But I'm not. My style of dance is probably, I would say contemporary, but if I were to point to a style, but truthfully, I just like to dance. I just like to let the music go
Nice.
and express myself.
Nice. I last year I got into Baby Ballroom on Netflix, and it was I don't know if you've seen it. It was two seasons, and it's about this one of the more prestigious ballroom schools in the UK, and they produce the national champions and everything like that. And so it follows these couples around, and they're from ages 5 to about 16. And my gosh, it was so much fun to watch.
Oh,
So I
I
recommend
bet.
that if you haven't watched it.
I bet.
Yeah, so the question that I'm going to ask you, Lori, and I'm going to ask it of everybody who's watching. So, if your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to put this in the chat. The question is, talk about one thing you really like about yourself.
One thing I really like about myself, I love to be witty. I love to be improvisational in conversation. And I love, I love the surprise of when I actually am able to do a callback from inside of the conversation, if that makes sense. That somehow opens up the conversation to a completely different level.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you say a callback. First of all, that's it's a very good technique to do in both like something like a TED Talk and stand-up comedy, right?
Yes.
Audiences love callbacks.
I'm a student of comedy. I probably suck at it really, a lot, but I have had some experience in it. And I think comics are the greatest gifts to humanity. That's a big statement, I know.
Yeah, we need them. We need them. They're the present day court jesters, so
yeah,
like you said, the court jester, right? You're the one who gets to tell the king the truth without getting your head cut off. Well, same thing of comics. I mean, look at what some of these comics have been doing, in the past couple of years.
Yes.
So
yes,
I'm all about it.
Yeah, me too. It's an incredible gift.
So thank you for answering that question. I know it's a vulnerable question, and
it was a positive one, though.
Yeah, it was a good one.
But it's hard. The worst day of my life, or the most shameful thing I ever did.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's harder than it seems to answer that question. So thank you for answering it. For those of you watching, get Dancing Naked and learn to be a conscious leader and a better leader every day. Lori, how can people get in touch with you?
You can email me at Lori@conscious, CONSCIOUS, leaders, that's with an S at the end of it, LEADERS.US. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, just under Lori Darley. I also have a Facebook page, but my company does, but I confess I've not been terribly active on it. I think I've been coached to just keep it on Facebook. And I still have a Facebook account, but I will tell you that I took it off my phone because it was just sucking the life out of me.
Smart. Yep.
Yeah.
That's very smart. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And
it was such a pleasure.
Yeah, this was really great. And I love talking with authors, and especially RTC authors. I find that they just lead with the heart. So thank you all for being here. And
thank you.
We'll see you next time.